Hello and welcome to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We're really glad to have you with us for today's show.
Mm.
I am joined today, as always, by my good buddy Caleb. How's things going, Caleb?
Great. How are you today,
Excellent.
Mark?
I am
Good.
doing really well. I'm excited about this show. We'll be talking about
hmm
Miss Marvel. Lots to talk about there. Before we get too deep into this, a little bit of housekeeping to do here. First of all, we are sponsored by progressivechristianity.org. We really hope that you will go check them out. There's so much content available there that I believe you will appreciate immensely. So be sure to go to progressivechristianity.org and check them out there. Also, check us out on Facebook at the Moonshine Jesus Show and anywhere you get your podcast. Be sure that you sign up for our podcast so you get it when it drops every Tuesday there. We would certainly appreciate it. And before we go any further in the show, we need to make sure that you realize this is a spoiler-loaded show, correct?
Yeah, you're not a spoiler-free zone at all. You're going to find out a lot about it.
Absolutely. You're going to learn all kinds of things. So don't come here thinking that this is going to be a spoiler-free viewing of Miss Marvel today. And we have some good news to announce, right, Caleb?
Yes. Oh, we do.
Yeah,
about Wild Goose.
Absolutely. This is exciting.
Yeah.
So we're going to be on the Goose Cast stage at Wild Goose
Woo!
on Saturday at, I think it's either 4:15 or 4:30 that we're scheduled for. And so we want folks to show up. Now, part of why we want you to show up is that we've done some pretty fun stuff.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a few giveaways. So for the, I think, first 20 or 25 folks that show up, we have some Moonshine jugs that will be loaded with
jugs.
We
got jugs. We got a jug. But what's going to be in it?
We'll have one of our crafted cocktails that go along with the theme of whatever we'll be talking about today. So we hope you come. We're going to work in some audience participation, and those who participate, we'll have some T-shirts to give away, some Shine Jesus Shine, the Moonshine Jesus Show T-shirts, and a few other little giveaways as well. So we really hope that people show up and join us there. It's going to be fun. All right, Caleb,
I can't wait. Yes.
I can't either. It's going to be so much fun. Let's get this started
with
our drinks. We're doing something that has never been done on the Moonshine Jesus Show before.
It.
This show had a 3-year run, and then for certain reasons, we took a little time off. We've rebooted it, and we're well into our 4th year here, and we've never done this. Out of a respect for the television show and the Muslim faith, which plays a very large role in this, our drinks today are alcohol-free.
Oh, my gosh.
And we're looking at Pakistani drinks that are popular. Just again, to honor this second-generation immigrant family that's the focus of the show. So, Caleb, I cannot wait to hear what you came up with.
Okay, yes. So my alcohol-free drink today is a mango lassi. And a lassi is kind of like a yogurt smoothie. And so you can make it with a number of different fruits. But this one is mango. And I've got a confession to make. I did not make this myself.
No. You found a place to get it.
Yeah, so I've got a Pakistani restaurant a couple of blocks away from my house. And so I decided that since we're talking about this, I was going to go and support a local business and also not have to make this myself. So this is halal. This is permissible. That's something we learned on the show.
Very nice. Absolutely. I love it.
No, I got it from a halal restaurant. How about you? What do you got?
I am going with a drink that's called shikanji. It is sometimes referred to as a spicy lemonade. Here's my drink. It is lemonade. It's got ginger juice in it. It's got black salt. It's got roasted cumin in it, and some black pepper. And of course, you've got to use freshly squeezed lemonade. I will say I did make this drink on my own. I also put a little mint on top for the aromatic when you're drinking. It is incredible. I'm not sure I ever want to drink regular lemonade again. This thing is amazing.
It sounds good. It looks
spicy. Good. It's spicy. It's earthy. It's got citrus sourness to it. It's so good, man. I can't say enough good about it. So cheers to you, sir.
Cheers, Mark. Cheers to all of you watching and listening out there.
Exactly. And here's to a great show. We're going to catch you on the other side of this drop.
Mm.
Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Won't you shine a light?
Welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. This is our section where we geek out about the show, but hang on, because after this section where we geek out a little bit, we're going to talk about the theological and political aspects of the show, and there is a lot to dig into there as
Absolutely.
well. I've seen a lot of comments, Mark, about our drinks and how wonderful they look, and they really are wonderful. And so if you're listening live, we'd love to hear what you're drinking too, whether
Absolutely.
it is halal, whether it's permissible, or whether it's haram and it's not. We'd love to hear about either one of those. So today we're going to talk about Miss Marvel. And Miss Marvel is exciting. This is one of the newest Marvel comic releases. It's streaming on Disney Plus, and it is the first live action Miss Marvel that we have seen. And it is the first Muslim superhero that we have seen, which is significant in and of itself. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go on. In it, Kamala Khan navigates being in high school, her family life, her religion, figuring out how to fangirl about the Avengers, with the protests of her family. And she balances all of this with her newfound superpowers, where she can create what she calls hard light that she can kind of control and make into different forms. And here's what I really liked about this show, Mark. I found it interesting that the actress who plays Kamala Khan, her name is Aman Vellani, she has a life that really mirrors her character. And so
unreal,
she
right?
would. It is, right? She would save up her allowance and she would go and buy comic books. And she was obsessed with Miss Marvel because it was someone who looked like her. And then she'd go to thrift stores and she would go and buy costumes so that she could cosplay at school. So I'm curious what you think about Aman Vellani's take on the character of Kamala Khan.
I absolutely think she nails it. I am not a giant student of the original comics, which we should mention were written by G. Willow Wilson, and she won she won the Hugo Award for 2015 for these comics. So it's been recognized as great comics to start with.
Right.
It's very clear. It's very clear that Imani had been a fan of the comics, because she just amazingly embodies the character.
She just inhabits.
It feels so real and true and honest. Like I can't say enough good about it. I really can't. She's amazing. I mean, what do you think?
She's incredible. I think she nails it, and she gets this aspect of it right, where there's this teenager trying to deal with all these complications of figuring out who she is and also wanting more. And I think that comics really shine when they focus on that aspect of, like, whenever they focus on people who are searching for their identity, who are like in high school at that time. I think that they really shine. And so I loved seeing that piece. I also loved just the tone of the show. I loved, the opening with kind of the 80s music, and you could see, Kamala's drawings up there. She's like daydreaming and wondering. Well, what do you think about the tone of the thing?
I think the tone hits it perfectly. It's lighthearted, but it gets serious when it needs to. I love visually. It's such a visual show, and it's really well done from a director's standpoint and from a cinematography point of view. Some amazing things are done in there. But frequently in the background, there's these lovely kind of jewel bright tones, which really, kind of is a reflection of the Pakistani culture. It's these deep, earthy jewel tones, and we see that in the background a lot. And then, like you said, there's this wonderful kind of 80s almost feel to it, even though it is a little more modern. And they use her youthfulness and her ability to draw shows up so much in this, and we see that in some of the places. They'll even have some of her drawings, or what could have been her drawings, on the buildings behind her that are helping move the story forward. And I think it's well done. It's very well imagined. It's filmed in a way that I don't think we've seen any of the Marvel serials or even the movies filmed. It's got a whole new feel. This bright, youthful, quick cuts, but sometimes there's also these beautiful long one-take cuts. I don't think we've seen anything like it before.
I don't think so either. And I like how they kept it fresh, even with like showing text messages as if they were written. That can feel so overdone,
weird, or just written out on the screen, and you're going, okay,
just right, yeah. But it's like integrated as if it was a different part of the scenery or whatever. So it's visually very stunning to watch and interesting to watch.
Is.
I couldn't keep my eyes off of it because I like to do other things when I'm watching. I was like trying to iron and wash the dishes and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, I want to see what's going on. And I often don't have that. So I think it's also cool that, that you were talking about the Pakistani colors and all. And the fact that she gets her powers from this bracelet that is a piece of her heritage is another way that kind of... Okay, tell me. Yeah.
Is it really from the bracelet? I mean, when she puts the bracelet on, we definitely... Part of why I'm asking this is because I've read some of the comics.
Okay.
And yes, when she puts that bracelet on is when her powers are initiated. But I want to point out. I'm going to point out.
It's a spoiler alert, Mark. It's a spoiler alert, but because it hasn't even shown on the. More about it than the episodes have even revealed.
I don't know if I do. We saw her put it on, and it seemed to be that's at least when it initiated. Okay. So I don't know if this is my theory. This is
a theory. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. There's a couple of things going on here. Okay. Yeah. So do you remember when her best friend Bruno shows up to her house and her mom says, "Oh, you should stay for dinner." And he's like, "I can't stay for dinner. I got things I got to go do." And she said, "Well, you're going to take food home." And she goes into the kitchen, and then she comes back with a stack of food and says the bottom was really hot for whoever, someone in his family, I assume.
Yeah.
Brings it, and he said, "Wow, that was fast."
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And she says something about, "Well, you have your electronics and I have my own thing." Okay. It took her 10 seconds. Mm-hmm. It took her 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And we didn't, and this show hasn't been cartoonish in that it exaggerates time or anything ever.
That's true. Yeah.
So if she really did that in 10 seconds, and grandma's or Nani's bracelet is what makes her kind of her powers come to light.
Yeah.
I can't help but believe what we have here, and some of this is a little bit from comics, is a line like a line of women in her family that are passing down superhero traits. I'm going to go as far as to say, I think, for those who are big Marvel fans, that this is that they're part of the Inhumans. That's something that the Kree create, and that maybe the bracelet's Kree technology. I think that the 10 rings in Shang-Chi are probably Kree technology as well, and that they're all related to the to the vibranium meteor. So I kind of feel like she had these abilities in her that got set off by this connection with her grandmother. And that comes through and that maybe mom, because we see mom kind of shaking her head at this bracelet and trying to hide it from Kamala. I kind of feel like mom knows that she has her own powers, but feels that they're bad or that they're negative. And so I don't know. My thought is that there's this innate internal ability, because she's an Inhuman, that when she makes this connection with her grandmother, it starts to come out. In the comics, it comes about in a
Yeah.
little bit of a different way in terms of how she gets her powers.
Yeah.
But I can see some hinting that maybe that's going to be
Mm.
related. So that's where my take is that maybe these are abilities that are within her, and we're seeing the early stages of them right now with the hard light. Because we very
Ooh, yeah.
seldomly have a superhero who we see them the first time
Uh-huh.
for everything they are. They tend to be developing their
Mhm.
powers. Like Iron Man, the first time we see him is in
Right.
that clunky giant suit, and
Uh-huh.
it
Right.
hones it in. I think that maybe we're seeing just the surface of her powers. Because, for instance,
Yeah.
in the comic book, remember when she saves the kind of the girl that was looking down on her a little bit, and we see
Uh-huh. Yeah.
this hard light hand stop her from falling.
Uh-huh.
Well, in
Right.
the
Yeah.
comic books, her hand actually enlarges and stretches
Mm.
out and
Mm.
catches her, and I feel like we might end up seeing that, because we did see near the end of the show a chalk hand drawn on a big building that was enlarged, catching someone that was
Mm.
falling. So I don't know. That's my fan theory. That's my fan theory. I'm kind of excited that that's where it might go.
I like it. Yeah, that sounds that seems interesting. And we'll have to see, is she inhuman? Or is it an artifact? What is it that is giving her powers? We're gonna have to wait and see. We're gonna have to hang in there. But there's a lot there to explore. I love it. So I also love the fact that this took place in Jersey City. I think that the fact that we're talking about a minority community and it's set in Jersey City is the perfect setting, right? It's like the across from New York City. That it's in New Jersey. It's kind of looked down upon. This is the perfect setting for a comic character like Kamala Khan. Someone who's kind of a social outcast. All the way down to where she is living and what her situation is like. What do you think? What do you think about the setting, Mark?
I thought it was brilliant. I kind of liked that it was close enough to a big city that you probably do have this sort of maybe you have at least a reasonable size of a Muslim community there. We see that when they go out shopping, and there is this sort of area where a lot of their the foods that would be traditional are there, and a dress shop and that kind of thing. So it's just big enough that it's a city large enough that they would have a little of their culture, which I think is great, because I think that means that we get to, as viewers, see a lot more of their culture. But it's also not, as you point out, New York City, which we were used to seeing superheroes a lot. Like, particularly in the Marvel universe, we tend to see them there. I love that she's kind of off, just outside of that, doing her own thing, and like you said, an outsider. And it's a little bit of a grittier city in terms of, it's not as fancy and everything, which I think fits perfectly for what they're doing in storytelling here.
They even joke about it, right? Whenever she loses her bike, and she's like, "What do you think the chances are it's going to be there when I get back?" As she's getting on the bus, and he's like, "In Jersey City, 0.0001%," which just speaks to how. But you're right. It's great to see kind of them enfleshed in Muslim community, and I think she deals with that reality that we're talking about as well. She says, it's not brown girls from Jersey City who saved the world, as she's struggling with coming to terms with these powers, and so they articulate it pretty well for us. But that was Bruno.
Yeah. Oh, Bruno's fantastic. I agree.
Yeah. And I love the way he supports her in the midst of that, as she's struggling with that identity. He said, "You want to save the world, you go save the world."
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I love that was sort of their own commentary on the show. How often does a brown girl from Jersey City save the world? And that's exactly what this show is a brown girl from, like, I love that they're kind of commenting on their own, that this is how unusual this is, the show itself.
Right.
And I love that it's interesting. I watched, because neither of us, obviously Pakistani, neither of us are teenage girls, neither of us are Muslims. So I was very curious as to how the show lands with that community. And so I found this fantastic. As far as I know, they only have one video out right now. They call themselves the Rizvi twins, Rizvi twins. And they are Pakistani American teenage girls. And
Perfect. Yeah.
and they did a full reaction video to the
Mhm.
first episode, and it was I loved watching them react to the show as much as I loved the show. I bring this up because
Mhm.
at the very beginning, they hadn't read anything about Miss Marvel
Mhm.
outside of who the hero was.
Yeah.
They were like, well, I'm sure that this is just going to be another one of those shows where we're
Right.
misrepresented, and
Uh-huh.
the brown girl is going to fall in love with the white boy, and
Right.
and so it was wonderful to watch them
Mm.
reacting to the show, and
Mhm.
then of course the white boy shows up. She said, there's the white boy,
There he is.
and they're going to do it
Waiting
again,
for
where
the one. Uh-huh.
and so they were pleased to see that this was really kind of this really unique friendship that's developing, where they
Mhm.
support each
Yeah.
other and really do care about each other. And I have to say, over and over again, as they're watching it, particularly
Yeah.
the parts that some of us might not have really
Mhm.
fanned
Mhm.
out about, they were
Right.
like, this is so real. Like when Kamala's standing in front of the fireplace and talking to her parents on the
Uh-huh.
couches, saying that how much she wants to go, and she just kind of put this argument together, and even like says
Right.
it'll be a learning opportunity. And they're like, you don't understand, that's everything's about your schoolwork and your studies and learning
So
opportunities.
you're going to a party.
Right. And they were like, they were just, it was brilliant. It was so much fun
Uh-huh.
watching them go, this is so real. It's so accurate. I mean, they said,
Mm.
ultimately, they said it's about 85% accurate of a Muslim Pakistani life. But they said that it is the best Pakistani representation that they have ever seen on television or in the movies. So, and
Now that's
I just
incredible.
highly recommend that to people. The Rizvi
Yeah.
twins, I think it's the only video that they have, but it is just, it's a joy to watch them react
Yeah.
to someone respecting them and their culture.
That sounds incredible. And so we're already starting to pivot, I think, to some of the
Mhm.
theological and political aspects of this show. And I think there's a lot to delve into, especially as we talk about this first Muslim superhero that we've got on our screen. So let's listen to the drop. Let's come back and move into our Theopolitico segment.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. Thanks for all of you who have been sticking with us. We really appreciate you listening in live, as well as those who are listening back on the podcast. We appreciate you listening in and joining us for this discussion. So listen, we're in our theopolitical section. And obviously, like you said, we were beginning to pivot towards this anyway. Look, we so frequently in Hollywood see the representation of brown folks in entertainment as almost always the bad guy, or if they're male, they're almost always the bad guy with a very thick accent. And or if it's a female, it's a frightened Muslim woman with a job on, or a belly dancer or something like that. It's almost always that representation. We don't really see much else. I kind of love what they have done here with this show to really dig into and be respectful of this Muslim family's life and what matters to them.
Right.
And the diversity is not being painted as all Muslims are this one thing. I mean, you have brother Amir, who's very devout and who I have a horrible, unfair jealousy of his beard.
It's great. It's fantastic.
I'm full on. I'm not even like, I'm serious. I'm so jealous of that.
It's a fantastic
but
beard.
he is both this very devout Muslim, but dad it gives him a little bit of hard time about how much he prays and that kind of thing. And so dad's a little bit more a rule breaker almost kind of thing. I think there's a lot to learn about dad down the road in this.
We're gonna
because he's telling Kamala like, oh, you don't have to look through the rear view mirror that much, and just slow down at the stop signs, like all this kind of stuff. All these little hints at rule breaking going on.
Yeah.
And then mom might be the most stereotypical in terms of what we see is like a very strict parent who,
Right.
and I think that's on purpose. I think they're making fun of the trope of
I think
what
you're
we
right.
used
Yeah.
to see, and that they're going to flip it on us at some point as mom starts admitting she has powers and starts connecting more and identifying more with her kid. I don't know. I think that's going on. So how big of a deal do you think it is, one, that they've done this, and two, why do you think it took this long for us to get to the point that we're willing to, as a nation, as Hollywood, to have this is more honest and real representation on the screen, and particularly of Muslims? I mean, let's be honest, particularly over the last 10 years or so, we've had these worsening pictures and descriptions and visuals of who a Muslim person is. And so why do you think it took us this long to get here?
Yeah, so I think this is a representation of what is one of the most significant problems in Hollywood, right? Is that it's been whitewashed, and I think one of the reasons that it's been allowed to happen now is because there's been activism raising awareness about how inappropriate it is to cast white people to fill the roles of minorities. So I think that that's been a significant development, and something there's still a lot of room to work on, but I think that that's created some space. I think you're right. I think this is important because it is normalizing Muslim life. And so I think it's always been difficult probably to be a Muslim in the United States as it is to be a minority of any religious tradition. But I think it's especially hard to be a Muslim. And I think that's been very difficult in this post 9/11 world where Muslims were demonized and blamed for a long time. And then you had the Trump era that just as we were kind of starting to make some progress on all of that the Trump era, we had stuff like the Muslim ban and all banning people from Muslim majority countries, and I think it heightened fear of Muslims.
Absolutely.
Again. And so I think one of the cool things about this is that we just get to see people living their hashtag mosque life. As the Instagram click of girls in the mosque are saying. It's just a normalizing of life. And so I don't know about you, but I found myself enjoying just seeing Kamala live her life. Like usually in these shows, I'm like, when are they going to get their superpowers already? I'm ready to see what, let's move on. But her, I feel like this story is a strong story even without the superpowers, which I think is cool. So that's one of the things I think is happening. Here's another point, Mark, about where I saw this happen. I want to hear what you think about this. We see only 2 episodes we've seen so far, but the best part for me was when Kamala's friend was talking about her decision to wear the hijab and why she chose to wear it, right? Because it's not an expectation, apparently, in this community that they have the choice. Kamala Khan doesn't wear one, but her friend has decided to wear it. And she talks about the decision, about what went into the process and how it made her feel more her. I think the fact that they devoted a few minutes to talking about that was pretty powerful.
I thought it was incredible. I thought it was incredibly powerful. I also thought that it was a little bit of a peeling back or opening up the curtain behind the scenes of what's going on the show in general. I mean, I think the part of the theme of this show is learning to be comfortable with exactly who I am, finding myself and expressing it. The beauty of being in a community that accepts you for expressing exactly who you are, but 2, also of being surrounded by them when the larger community might or might not accept you, so that you have this support. And I really I'm seeing those themes beginning to come out. Even just in the way that Kamala and Bruno work together and kind of had this tight friendship that they kind of help each other no matter what negative stuff is hitting one or the other. So I thought it was brilliant. Thought it was necessary. I think it can be a learning experience. This is a highly watched show. Like the numbers for the show are crazy right now. So it's so important, the work they're doing, exactly like what you just pointed out. You're exposing so many people to a perspective they may not have thought of before. And I think that's that's so invaluable.
Absolutely. I mean, especially, we continue to try to break down these barriers between religious traditions. And I think one of the biggest problems is that we want to kind of generalize about other groups. I mean, just like
Mhm.
as Christianity isn't a homogenous group that you can just say
Right.
Christians believe such and
X.
such because it's
Yeah.
right, because it's not true. Like, and those of
Mhm.
us in progressive Christianity are almost in a different religious tradition entirely from the
Mhm.
fundamentalists, right? And so
Right.
it's the same with Muslims. A lot of times even when people are learning about a religious tradition, they learn about this tradition as if it was a homogenous group. And so
Yeah.
I think seeing the diversity in the
Right.
community, even like at a mosque, at a local mosque, and seeing the
Mm.
differences and practices and beliefs, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And you're right. I wish we'd seen it years sooner.
Yeah, I think we could have prevented a lot of honestly, I'm just going to say we could have prevented a lot of violence, of misunderstanding, of
Mhm.
marginalization. There's so much that could have been prevented if Hollywood would have presented a view of this culture and this religion that we're finally getting to see. Now, admittedly, um, the comic books came out early enough that folks would have been interested, but
Mhm.
they had a following, but a lot of the following were folks who were like, finally, I'm getting a comic that looks like me, or that
Right.
I can,
Sure.
yeah. So I think that it's a shame that we haven't had it, but I am terribly glad that we have it now. I'm looking forward to what they're going to do next in the show as we learn more and more. Like I said, the two young girls that I watched in their
Yeah.
reaction were just like, you don't understand. This is our culture, and for me, this was validation of. I felt like I was being very lucky that I was being invited into this culture to experience it and celebrate it.
Yeah.
But there was always this thing in the back. I don't know enough about the culture. Is this really what this is? And
Yeah.
to have those girls say, "Oh, this is us. This is
Yeah.
our people.
That's true. Yeah.
That's who my mom is. That's who my dad." Yeah, it was just
Yep.
brilliant. And I love that we finally get this, and it's so important. And it, I think, can help as we change the minds of our fellow Americans. We
Yeah.
can move towards rules and regulations that are going to be much more protective, and we won't get these Muslim bans, or at least we won't have as much tolerance from the citizens when they do try to do it. So
Oh,
listen,
here's what I
go
hear you
ahead,
saying, Mark. I
go
what I
right
hear you
for it.
saying is that Miss Marvel isn't just going to save the universe like on
Right,
screen, but she's
right.
going to like save our world in real life through the show, through
Sure,
learning about another religious tradition and a culture.
it certainly seems like that it can change a lot. I will have to say. All
Okay.
right. So listen,
Let's see.
I'm ready to have a little fun. It's time for us to move on to our next segment. This is a segment where Caleb and I try to make each other look stupid.
Oh. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We are moving into the Make Me Look Stupid segment. And, Mark had a zinger last week. He was talking about like Greek myths. I don't know. Or who knows what Mark is going to ask? You never know.
I promise you, this is a much better week for you. I promise you.
Okay. All right, good. So this week I get to start out. And
Oh yeah.
here's what I want to ask you, Mark.
Uh
So this
oh.
is an immigrant family, and they are talking about reasons that they moved to America, to the United States of America. And the dad says, we moved to America so that our kids could do anything that they want and be anything that they want. Here's my question for you, Mark. I want to know if that's something that really is possible in 21st century America. Is it possible to pull yourself up by your bootstraps? Is it possible to kind of have that American dream where everybody can be who they want and do what they want? Is that something that's possible or not?
No. Okay. My turn to answer a question or ask a question.
That's it. No.
No, listen. I think it's great that, I mean, yes, that's kind of the myth that's still out there, and it might have been that at one point, in comparison to other nations that you could possibly immigrate to, that there was more of a chance. But with the laws that we continue to put on the books, with the way that the cultural divides continue to happen, no, I think it's particularly difficult if you come in here from a non-European nation. Because there's so much of America that's looking down on you, that's feeling like your competition in some way. You know, what did they call it? The great white replacement, or whatever that stupid theory crap is.
Right.
So no, I mean, there is opportunity, but it's not what it should be. And the system is intentionally stacked against you, particularly if you're an immigrant. So it's a beautiful idea. It is kind of the American dream, that kind of thing. But let's just be honest. We're less of that than what we used to be. And it is necessary to do the work to get back to that being more of a reality. But right now, the major divide in America is between the haves and the have-nots. And if you happen to be a have-not that's also marginalized in another way, you're not Christian, you're Muslim, you're brown skin, not white skin, those kinds of things, unfortunately, in America, no, in my opinion, and I can't wait to hear you speak on this as well, are unfortunately have become intentional stumbling blocks for folks, and they need to be removed.
Yeah, I think that I don't think it's ever really been possible, especially whenever you're talking about those others. And in fact, I mean, in some ways, we've removed some of those barriers, because it used to be, that who was white, was very limited. You might have to come from, England,
a specific area,
or France, right? And so even if you were, like, say, Scots-Irish, or something
Polish,
like that, you weren't, or Polish, right? You were an other group. And so, I mean, in some ways, there's been some progress, but I think it's always been much more of a myth than a reality, that everyone had the same equal opportunity to really excel in this country. So, but I agree with you. I think it's very hard, and there are a lot of social structures that are set in place that really keep that from happening. And that's one of our calls, is to work on addressing those issues by voting and organizing and naming them, and I think one easy way we can do it is breaking down barriers,
right? And educating, which is exactly what the show is doing, which is kind of one of the beautiful parts about it. So, okay, my turn for a question.
Yours. Okay, I want to hear.
And listen, I'm not going to ask my own question. I'm going to ask a question that's out there floating around. That I've seen and heard about a lot. The question is this: is this focus, or at least highlighting, of a superhero's religion good for the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
I think it's wonderful. Maybe this is my bias, but I think it's always good when religion is tied in, because it's a part of life for the majority of the world, and it's a way that the world makes sense of the universe. And so I think it's important for that reason that we get another aspect of, like, people being people and people living their lives. But I also think it's particularly important because the Marvel Cinematic Universe has this huge influence, right? If you look at the movies that are amassing the most box office revenue, it's largely Marvel movies. And so we know that Miss Marvel is going to be in the next Captain Marvel movie. So she's going to get big screen time as well. And so I think putting a Muslim character at the center of something and naming it as naming her as a Muslim character and naming Islam as something that's important to in her life is something that destigmatizes the religion. And so I think that's a power that Marvel can use for good. That's like a real life superpower to be able to bring awareness and acceptance in front of a large group of people. That's incredible. So I think it's a great thing. What do you think about it, Mark?
No, I think it's a fantastic thing. And the reality is the people who are asking these questions are the people who don't want to see anything about Muslims on the screen. That's really what's going on here. I mean, let's be honest. We've already seen religion being important in the MC universe for a long time. Daredevil is Catholic, and we saw it in the was it Hulu that did the serial of I believe it was Hulu.
Daredevil. It was on Netflix.
But we saw a lot. He would go to his priest. He would have these discussions. There was a lot of stained glass imagery in the show.
Good point.
We've seen this a lot from a Christian's point of view. It was specifically talked about in Moon Knight that he's Jewish. It wasn't until we had a Muslim person on screen with being the lead superhero that we started seeing folks asking that kind of question. And so, yeah, I think you had a great answer. I'm with you completely 100% on it. As a matter of fact, I hope that they see these questions out there and double down on this. For instance.
Yeah, good. Do it.
In the comic books, she gains her powers through a Terrigen mist, which is by the Kree, and it basically makes you inhuman. And when she experiences the mist, she goes into kind of like we saw her fall backwards into this kind of other world that was dark and purple and mysterious. She goes into this other world. And in this one, in the comic books, there's Captain America, there's Iron Man, there's Captain Marvel, and they're speaking to her in her own language. And she says, "You speak Urdu?" And Captain Marvel says this. I love this. "We are faith. We speak all languages and of beauty and hardship." And then she asks her, "Who do you want to be?" And ultimately she says, "I want to be Captain Marvel." And she comes out as a white Captain Marvel, which is why they probably haven't chosen to do that, because that's not okay ultimately. And she learns, though, and she does learn quickly that she can be who she is, and that's when she becomes herself, and she's a brown-skinned girl and celebrates herself, which I think we're seeing being done in a different way in this show, of the importance of being who you really are. And in the comic books, she sees the work that she's doing as Miss Marvel as being the work of God in a social justice kind of thing, and that because she does this, it will bring blessings on her and her family. And so I love, it's deep in the comics, and I really hope that we're going to see this go deeper and deeper, and we see more and more of it. I think it'd be beautiful.
I think you're right. I love that. And the exploration of the positive aspects that can result from all different types of faith. I love that. And I think that's a great way to end our discussion on Miss Marvel. If you haven't checked it out, I hope you will. Only 2 episodes are out, but we've got a whole season. So watch it, support it, learn from it. It ought to be great. But next week, we are coming with another show. Mark, you want to tell us what we're going to be watching next week?
We are going to be watching The Orville. It's, I think, 3rd season just dropped, or at least the first 4 episodes of it. The Orville is about the USS Orville. Brilliantly named show, right? The USS Orville, which is an exploratory vessel, and they have what they call the Planetary Union, which is in the 25th century, and it's Earth and a bunch of other planets. And it's about the adventures of that ship and its crew, and involving kind of planet exploration, visiting other parts. And it kind of started off as this loving satire of Star Trek, the original show, and The Next Generation. And I think they've done this beautiful job. As a matter of fact, it's kind of developed into its own show. It's less satire now, although there are little nods and winks from time to time. But it is so much fun. The characters are great, and they do deal with a lot of moral issues. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun for us.
Okay, well, watch The Orville if you can, and we can't wait to see you next time on the Moonshine
Jesus Show.
Woo!
Moonshine.